Have you ever felt like you're living a life that isn't yours? That despite working hard, learning and enduring life's trials, you still can't truly enjoy your achievements? Because deep down, you feel you don't truly deserve them. Do you feel like you're playing a role and that one day someone will discover the truth about you? If so, you're part of a psychological battle far more common and profound than you might imagine: imposter syndrome. This condition is much more widespread than it seems, yet it's rarely discussed in depth. Many successful, seemingly confident people secretly struggle with the feeling that they don't deserve anything they've achieved. In this video, we'll go beyond definitions, exploring the psychological roots as well as the spiritual and neurological dimensions of this phenomenon, offering a complete and profound perspective. Anna is 42 years old. She has a stable career at a multinational company, a beautiful family, and a home that outwardly screams success. She's completed 2 degrees and has spent her life learning that she must work twice as hard to be respected. She's always been the good girl, diligent, serious, responsible. Every time she receives praise at work, she smiles politely and says thank you. But in her mind, a voice whispers, "You got lucky. Next time it won't work out. One day they'll see you're not as good as you seem." This voice isn't new. It appeared in her teens when she sought her mother's attention through perfect achievements. She grew up believing her worth equaled her performance, so any failure or even lack of results makes her feel non-existent. Anna overanalyzes every presentation, every email, every conversation. She looks for mistakes where there are none. Before any success, she feels anxiety. After any success, she feels like she's deceived expectations. Mental exhaustion becomes a way of life. What's even subtler is that Anna has learned to hide this inner chaos behind a smile. Over time, she's started to confuse herself with the mask she wears. She's become an expert at seeming fine, while inside she feels hollow. This experience isn't isolated. It's the daily reality for millions of people who, despite their competence, feel perpetually exposed. They fear that one day they'll be caught, that everything they've built will collapse. This chronic fear can damage relationships, health, and the ability to grow. Sometimes a major opportunity is unconsciously sabotaged at the crucial moment. Other times, the person simply gives up, even though they have everything it takes to succeed. Imposter syndrome is a profound psychological state, often invisible from the outside but extremely present in the inner world of those who experience it. It's characterized by a persistent doubt in one's own abilities, achievements, and personal worth. Those affected feel their success isn't authentic, that they've achieved it through luck, favorable circumstances, or by fooling others. Despite external recognition, degrees, awards, positions, validation, they can't internalize this success and live in constant fear of being unmasked. This state generates immense inner tension, leading to symptoms like anxiety, extreme perfectionism, procrastination, delaying important decisions or actions, self-isolation, and even depressive episodes. Often, imposter syndrome leads to decisions that limit personal and professional growth. Settling for jobs below one's potential, staying in unbalanced relationships, refusing growth opportunities, all due to an unconscious belief that I don't deserve more. At its core, imposter syndrome reflects a rupture between the authentic self, who we truly are, with our vulnerabilities, emotions and desires, and the surface self, the idealized image we believe we must project to be accepted, appreciated or loved. This divide creates chronic inner tension, where the individual feels they must constantly prove, perform, and surpass themselves to justify their existence. Essentially, it's a deep distrust in one's own worth, often formed in childhood when success was conditional, like "you're only good if you get straight A's." And mistakes were emotionally punished with phrases like "you've disappointed me" or "you're not capable." Thus, the child internalizes the idea that love and acceptance come only through performance, not simply through existence. Imposter syndrome doesn't manifest the same way for everyone. There are several mental patterns shaped by early experiences, family environment, and social pressures. Here's a detailed breakdown of each. The perfectionist. For the perfectionist, nothing is ever good enough. Any mistake is perceived as a major failure, proof of incompetence. Though they may achieve high standards, they never enjoy their accomplishments. Only temporary relief that they avoided failure. This attitude leads to emotional self-sabotage, as work becomes a source of stress and anxiety, not fulfillment. Perfectionism is often learned in families where praise came only when the child excelled. This person lives in fear of being judged if they don't meet the highest expectations, their own or others. The expert. The expert believes they must know everything about a subject before acting. They feel unprepared even when they have advanced knowledge. This pattern leads to procrastination, fear of decision-making, avoidance of responsibility, and a constant state of inadequacy. Any unanswered question feels like a threat to their worth. This pattern often appears in people praised in childhood for intelligence, like being told, "You're the smartest," who internalize the idea that, "If I don't know something, I'm worthless." The soloist. The soloist avoids asking for help, believing success must be achieved alone. They feel that if they receive support, their achievements are no longer valid. This belief leads to emotional isolation, chronic fatigue and burnout, as they take everything upon themselves. In childhood, these individuals learn that vulnerability is weakness or that they can't rely on others. Thus, they refuse help, convinced they shouldn't bother others or don't deserve support. The superhero measures their worth by how much they work. They're always busy, involved, active. Rest makes them feel guilty. They don't know how to stop because in their mind, stopping equals weakness. Often they burn out, suffering physical and emotional exhaustion. This pattern appears in those rewarded only for doing, not for being. The internalized message is, if I don't produce, I don't matter. The natural genius. The natural genius believes things should come easily to them to prove they're meant for it. If they face difficulties, they quickly feel discouraged and worthless. They avoid sustained effort, preferring to stay in their comfort zone, leading to stagnation and frustration. This pattern is seen in people praised for talent, but never taught perseverance or that mastery requires time and practice. When they encounter obstacles, they interpret them as proof they are not good enough. How are these patterns formed? All these patterns develop in childhood, when the mind is open and vulnerable to external messages, whether direct from parents, teachers, relatives, or indirect from media and social culture. They're reinforced in adolescence through comparison, social pressure, and the need for validation. In adulthood, these patterns become automatic, filters through which we perceive the world and ourselves. The insidious part is that these mechanisms install themselves subtly and become part of our identity. People rarely realize they're living with imposter syndrome. They perceive it as a personal truth. This is who I am. I'm not enough. The impact of imposter syndrome. The effect of these patterns is profound. They become forms of self-sabotage that block personal growth and authenticity. They prevent us from enjoying who we are, owning our merits, and building a life aligned with our values. Instead of living with confidence, we live in fear. Instead of evolving, we hide. Instead of being authentic, we play roles. Conclusion. Imposter syndrome isn't a flaw, but a psychological adaptation to environments that taught us you're not enough as you are. The good news is these patterns can be changed. Through introspection, therapy, healthy validation, and self-compassion, we can reconnect with our authentic selves and free ourselves from the need to constantly prove our worth. Because true worth isn't in how much you do, how much you know, or how perfect you are, but in who you are, imperfections included. From a spiritual perspective, imposter syndrome is more than a psychological mechanism. It's a subtle rupture between who we truly are, our authentic essence, and the self-image we've built to survive in the world. It's a disconnection from our soul, from the inner truth we've hidden or denied out of fear. In spiritual terms, this separation manifests as a shadow. The concept of the shadow comes from Jungian psychology but is deeply relevant in any journey of self-discovery. The shadow is the part of ourselves we were taught to reject. Emotions, instincts, traits or desires that weren't accepted by parents, society or even ourselves. But the shadow isn't just a dark place. It holds essential parts of our power, creativity and authenticity. Often it's where our courage to say no, our passion for meaningful living, and our deep intuition reside. When these parts aren't integrated, they become sources of self-sabotage, fear, and shame, core traits of imposter syndrome. Whenever we come close to success, deep connection, or authentic recognition, the shadow surfaces. It tests us. Are you sure you deserve this? Won't someone hurt you if you show your true self? Wouldn't it be safer to stay back in your comfort zone? This dynamic creates an identity crisis, a clash between the real self, the soul, and the social self, the mask. We're not used to seeing ourselves clearly. That's why when others appreciate us, we reject it. It doesn't fit the old image we were forced to maintain, the one who's never enough. From a spiritual standpoint, imposter syndrome is a calling, an invitation to deep introspection, not to fix something wrong in us, but to reclaim the abandoned parts. The soul doesn't want us perfect. It wants us whole. How to work spiritually with imposter syndrome? Shadow acceptance. Start by noting all the aspects of yourself you wouldn't show the world. Fears, weaknesses, even the positive traits you're afraid to own. Writing them down makes them less threatening. You become their witness, not their victim. Deep reflection. Practice. In meditation or prayer, ask your soul, which part of me have I hidden the most, and what would it mean to show up fully? Sit with the answers, don't force them. Forgiveness and self-compassion. You can't move forward if you hate yourself for the past. Forgive yourself for every moment you felt inadequate. Instead of judging your fears, embrace them. Tell them, I understand why you're here. But now, I choose differently. Affirming the authentic self. Choose daily to express yourself honestly, even in small ways. Be real when saying, I don't know, I need help, I'm nervous. True power comes from conscious vulnerability. Spiritual reconnection rituals. This could be morning meditation, silent prayer, a candlelit bath, or writing a letter to your future self. Create space to hear your inner voice without the world's noise. Imposter syndrome, viewed through this lens, becomes not a burden, but a portal back to yourself. And yes, it's uncomfortable. But discomfort doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. Sometimes it's a sign you're nearing the truth. The shadow doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to be seen. It wants to feel safe. And when you accept it, something profound shifts. You're no longer an imposter. You're a complete human, imperfect but whole. And perhaps in that moment you begin to live not to prove, but to be. From a neurological standpoint, imposter syndrome is sustained by cognitive biases and how our brain filters and stores experiences. A key mechanism is negativity bias, the natural tendency to focus more on mistakes, dangers and rejections than on successes or praise. This mechanism was essential for human survival. In ancient times, remembering danger was more critical than remembering sweet fruit. But in modern society, this reflex keeps the alarm system active even when we're safe, like when receiving a promotion or compliment. The brain interprets these moments as threats to the ingrained self-image. The amygdala, the brain's fear center, also plays a crucial role. In people with imposter syndrome, it overreacts even to neutral or positive contexts, perceiving success as a risk. If I get attention, I'll be judged more harshly. Long-term, living with thoughts like I'm not good enough or I don't deserve this creates automatic neural pathways, like mental highways. The more they're activated, the stronger they become, embedding themselves in the brain's structure as truths that are hard to dismantle without conscious effort. The good news? Thanks to neuroplasticity, these pathways can be rewired. The brain is malleable and can learn new connections. But this process requires intention, effort, and repetition. Saying I am worthy once isn't enough. You must repeat it, feel it, and act accordingly. Effective practices for rewiring these circuits include mindfulness and meditation, reduces amygdala activity, strengthens the prefrontal cortex, responsible for reasoning and decision-making, and creates a pause between stimulus and response. In that pause, you choose a different response. Cognitive journaling. Write down automatic thoughts and challenge them with reality. What evidence do I have that I don't deserve this? What evidence do I have that I do? This exercise engages rational thinking and weakens distorted thoughts. Personalized affirmations, not generic ones, but tailored to your vulnerabilities. Repeated daily, they begin forming new neural pathways. Gradual exposure to success. Accept small wins without downplaying them. Yes, I did well. With each internal validation, the brain learns it's safe to feel competent. Therapy, especially therapies focused on rewiring mental patterns, CBT, schema therapy, EMDR, help recalibrate the emotional brain and uncover subconscious roots of imposter syndrome. These changes aren't instant. Neuroplasticity isn't magic. It's gentle discipline and consistency. Learning to see yourself differently is perhaps one of the most powerful inner revolutions. The brain can become your strongest ally, but for that you must feed it something other than fear. You must nourish it with safety, truth, and love. And the inner voice that once whispered, "You don't deserve," can be replaced with one that says, "I am here. I have learned. I deserve to be." Imposter syndrome doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's often the result of an emotionally fragile foundation formed in childhood. Many who struggle with it grew up in families where love was conditional. I love you only if you succeed. Maybe you were a child who received validation only when you performed, when you got top grades, when you were obedient. Or maybe conversely, you received no validation and tried to compensate by becoming perfect. Either way, the same conclusion formed: I must be different from who I am to be loved. This belief gradually becomes an unconscious mechanism influencing every aspect of adult life. In relationships, it can manifest as fear of abandonment or an excessive need to prove you're enough. At work, it shows up as perfectionism, self-sabotage, or success avoidance. School, the education system, and success cultures based on comparison deepen this wound. Instead of cultivating authentic confidence, we learn to compete, compare, and fear mistakes. A bad grade becomes not just a poor result, but an attack on the child's identity. And if performance is the only source of praise, every effort becomes a fight to earn love. This paradigm is reinforced by cultures that promote modesty to the point of self-denial. We're told not to boast, not to believe in ourselves, to downplay our achievements. Thus, people feel guilty for success, and every compliment triggers anxiety. Internally, a constant dialogue runs. If they knew the real me, they wouldn't respect me. Social media amplifies these tendencies. We live in a world where every success is displayed publicly, edited, packaged in perfection. We compare our raw reality to others' idealized showcases, and inevitably we feel inadequate. Like we're not doing enough, like others know something we don't. In reality, most people carry the same fears, but because we don't voice them, we think we're the only flawed ones. This emotional isolation sustains the imposter feeling. If we had the courage to speak openly about what we truly feel, we'd discover how universal these experiences are. Hustle culture, The glorification of non-stop work and performance also plays a toxic role. It's become shameful to slow down, to have doubts, to ask for help. People feel forced to pretend they have everything under control, when inside they're exhausted and uncertain. Extended family, friends, even some spiritual communities can contribute to imposter syndrome by promoting messages like, humility means never believing you're too good, or it's wrong to stand out. Thus, asserting your worth becomes an act perceived as selfish or arrogant. In truth, acknowledging who you are isn't pride, it's honesty. Honoring your gifts isn't vanity, it's respect for life. And allowing yourself to receive appreciation is often the first step toward healing. To break this cycle, awareness and courage are needed. Awareness of the patterns implanted in us and the courage to rewrite them. It's not an easy path, but it's a liberating one. And it begins with the question, what part of me was I taught to hide in order to be loved? The answer to this question can be the start of returning to your authentic self, where you no longer need to prove anything, where you are enough exactly as you are. Rewriting limiting beliefs. Identify your inner critic. Give it a name. Listen to it, but don't let it lead. Engage in conscious dialogue. Where do you come from? What are you trying to protect? Reframe thoughts. Instead of "I'm not enough," say "I'm constantly growing and learning." Repetition creates reality. Emotional healing through self-compassion. Treat yourself gently. Imagine your emotions as a frightened child. Don't push them away. Hold them. Write a letter to yourself from the perspective of a wiser version of you. What would that you say beyond the fear? Spiritual reconnection. Practice meditation or silent prayer. Learn to listen to your soul. Truth comes from stillness. Do shadow work. Accept the parts of yourself you were taught to reject. Your shadow often holds your creative power. Behaviors that build self-esteem. Take small challenges and celebrate each win. Do things that scare you slightly. That's how you grow. Stop waiting until you deserve it. Start even if you don't feel 100% ready. Support through safe relationships. Find people you can be open with. One person who listens with their heart can rewrite years of shame. Share how you feel. Say, "Sometimes I feel like an impostor." You'll discover you're not alone. This journey isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you are. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to finally look at yourself with the eyes of your heart. If you've made it this far, something in this message has deeply resonated with you, and that's no accident. It's a sign it's time to come home, not to an address, but to yourself, to your essence, to the truth that's always been there, beyond fears, labels and masks. Imposter syndrome isn't a disease, it's not a shame, it's a signal. An inner voice saying, "I want to know myself truly. I want to feel safe being me." When you feel undeserving, ask, who first planted this idea in me? Was that person qualified to define my worth? Often the answer is no. The truth is, you've gotten this far not by luck, but by courage. You've made hard choices. You've grown through pain. You've endured when others might have quit. And maybe you've never told yourself this, but you deserve to be proud. You deserve to receive. You deserve to enjoy without justifying anything. No one is coming to validate you with a certificate of worth, because true validation comes from within, from the moment you choose to say, "I am enough, here, now, exactly as I am." Life isn't a competition, it's a journey. And perhaps the most beautiful journey is the one where we turn toward ourselves with acceptance, gentleness, and love. So if you feel it's time to reclaim your power, take the first step. Write in the comments, "I recognize myself." It's a simple but profound declaration. For you, for others who need to know they're not alone. If this message touched you, I invite you to share this video. Bring light to someone else's shadow. And if you want to continue this journey with me, subscribe to the channel. More episodes are coming on freeing the mind, healing the soul, and living in truth. See you soon. Until then, remember who you are.